So I'm starting with about 8 pounds worth of whole cabbage. We're only going to need about 5 pounds for the recipe, but because I'm going to be taking out some of the outer leaves, get rid of some of the less than perfect pieces there, and then of course removing the core, it's going to whittle down to about 5 pounds worth. Our next step is going to be shredding all of this cabbage. You can do that by hand with a knife and a cutting board. You could use a mandolin, or today we'll be using a food processor. So now that most of our cabbage is shredded, we're going to measure out our 5 pounds. Our next step is to rinse it off. You'll need to do this probably in batches because there's a lot of cabbage. For the entire recipe, all 5 pounds, we'll add 3 tablespoons of our salt. And you might be tempted to cut back on the amount of salt because sauerkraut is a very high sodium product. But again, for safe fermentation, we want to use all that salt that's called for in the recipe. So now that our cabbage has been salted and it's starting to wilt, we're going to move it into our containers. We'll add a little bit of cabbage at a time. With the fermenting, you will need a little bit of headspace, and so that is the distance between the top of your container and the top of your food. There's recommendations that you want about 4 to 5 inches of that headspace in there, and some of that is so we can cover it with a little bit more of our brine that we've created, some of that water and salt. In the fermentation process, we want to keep all of our cabbage underneath our liquid. So it's going to be in an anaerobic or no oxygen environment. Depending on the type of container that you have, some crocks that you can buy for fermentation have a built-in weight and a lid. The weight will help keep our cabbage underneath our brine, and then the lid keeps any extra air out. Since neither of our containers have lids, we're going to use 2 plastic bags. I have added some of our brine to our bags to start with. You'll add just enough to fill up the bags, enough to weigh it down, so we're going to adjust our amount as needed. We'll push it so that our outer bag fills all 4 corners of our container. Currently all of my corners are nice and covered. So we're going to move these into a cool area. Ideal temperature is about 70 to 75 degrees. You've got an area like that in your home. And we do want to keep them in a dark place, so we're going to cover these with a towel. Over time, as the cabbage starts to settle, you may need to add more water, more brine to weigh down the cabbage. It takes about 3 to 4 weeks for our big container, and about 1 to 2 weeks for our smaller container. Some signs that you've done with fermentation is the bubbles that are being produced by our bacteria will start to slow. So you know there's fewer bubbles in, and you'll notice now this is a lot of yellow, kind of a golden color, and that's what you're looking for as we get closer to the end. We are at about 4 weeks with the sauerkraut, the large container, so we've got this nice yellow color. When we started it was more of a white to a green color. It's also much more compressed, so we did start up a little bit higher. Now we're able to see all that liquid has been moved out, so we've got a very compressed sauerkraut. So we'll remove both bags. And you can dump this all at once, or I find it's just a little bit easier to move a few pieces on their own, since it's pretty compressed in there. It's a little easier to get out this way. We're going to add our lid and label it so we know when we've put it in. And we're going to move this to a refrigerator for 2 to 3 months. You get to enjoy it for quite a while.